Now, we turn to our top story, bombshell developments in the Idaho student murders case against Bryan Kohberger. Court filings are revealing potential new evidence ahead of the defendant's trial. It's currently scheduled for August. One of those filings includes the state obtaining a search warrant for Kohberger's Amazon click history. The state claims that they have evidence showing that the months before the killings, Kohberger purchased a K-bar knife, which is the same style as the alleged murder weapon. Purchased it with a sheath and a sharpener, all purchased from Amazon. Now, the defense has asked the judge to exclude any Amazon evidence, arguing that the click activity was from a family account. Well, as we know, the DNA on the knife has been a very hot topic at previous hearings.
And the court's question, good question, what does that mean? Could it mean there's more than one person? The answer to that is, or it could mean it's not Bryan because his car's got nothing in it and there were only 13 minutes to do this. The magistrate didn't get to know that.
In fact, his DNA is still on the knife sheath, though. That's the problem, counsel, for probable cause purposes.
The state also plans to use this selfie of Bryan Kohberger. Look at this. Prosecutors say that he took it just hours after the fatal stabbings occurred. And you can see he's given a thumbs up in the photo for whatever reason, wearing a dress shirt all buttoned up, all the way, his collar buttoned up, and he has what appears to be wireless earbuds in his ears. First, it kind of looks like hair when you see it, but those are earbuds. We took a closer look. And there's a hearing coming up on April 9th to address all of these issues that are coming up. And we're talking about it now. We're not waiting till April 9th. Let me bring in our guest. I'm so happy to have on the program criminology expert, professor and author, Dr. Debbie Goodman, and criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor, Joe Tamburino. Good morning to you both. Let's start with the Kohberger selfie. It seems to be kind of breaking the internet. So many people examining every little thing that's in that picture. Dr. Debbie, we're dying to hear your thoughts, please.
Thank you. Good morning. My thoughts, Julie, slam dunk, and here's why. If we were to open any college or university textbook on serial and mass murderers, this is absolutely one of these checkpoints and check marks of what these individuals do. I actually have the exact quote, Julie. I remember seeing an interview days before Ted Bundy was executed, and a journalist asked him, "Why did you take photos of victims in the crime scene?" And here's his exact quote: "When you work hard to do something right, you don't want to forget it." So I feel that this photo is so eerie and chilling, yet very indicative of this individual wanting to remember what he did. And I think it's absolutely a nod to his guilt. We see him in what appears to be a bathroom, a shower, nicely dressed, this thumbs up, a smirk, a smug. And there's, again, this sense of pride and pleasure that he exudes. And Julie, you had said at the onset, you know, is some of this a coincidence? I can assure you, as a criminologist, there is absolutely zero coincidence when it comes to murder. This is very significant, very substantial.
Dr. Debbie, great analysis. Thank you for that. Joe Tamburino, I want to ask you about the Amazon search history and the knife that he purchased months before the homicides. We purchased the exact same kind of knife just to see what it would look like for our documentary. This is heavy. This is really, really, this is huge. I held this once before. I want to be so careful as I'm pulling it out. Oh. I don't want to yank it out. I'll do it as you're talking, Joe, very carefully, and then hold it up. Tell me, do you think the defense has a chance to keep the jury from knowing about him buying this ahead of time?
Good morning, Julie. Zero chance. That history is going to come in. And this is very common in today's world. So here's what happens. When you get into an investigation, one of the first things that a good investigator will do is get search warrants on what you've been Googling, your electronic devices, whether it's a phone or a pad. Why? Because in today's world, we all look on the internet and we purchase things, whether it's shampoo, soap, clothes, whatever it is. it tells the investigator what a person is looking for, which goes to their state of mind. So if they could lay foundation, meaning that they're able to show, based on the search warrant, that this was his Amazon account, and in fact, he did order this, and he paid for it through some means, whether PayPal account or his credit cards or something like that, they're going to get it admitted. Now, the defense could say, well, wait a minute, it has less weight because he shared this account with Tom, Dick, Harry, whoever it was. But still, this is coming in, and it's going to be damaging evidence for him.
Joe, thank you so much for that. So I got it out. Look how large this is. This gives me chills seeing this, holding it. It's so heavy, it's so big, it's so awkward in this big, giant sheath. And we know it was on the snap of this knife sheath where Bryan Kohberger's DNA was found, that touch DNA. Dr. Debbie, what does this choice of weapon say to you?
It says it was very planned, Julie, very purposeful, premeditated. You know, with mass and serial killers, they're extremely selective about everything, about their victims, the day, the time, the location, and the weapon. And when it comes to these types of depraved killers, the three weapons, if you will, tend to be the gun, the knife, and the ligature. So the fact that this search was done in March, 8 months before the tragedy in November, again points to what we have discussed on several occasions, and that is, at least in my opinion, the level of planning that went into this was very lengthy, and I believe this individual has thought about it for a considerable period of time, selecting that exact weapon that, by the way, the military also uses for defensive tactics and training purposes. And I know there's been back and forth discussion online and social media. Well, what if he's a fisherman, and what if he's a hunter, or what if he's in the military? And the answer to all three is he's none of the above.
Dr. Debbie, thank you for that. This is really, really fascinating insight you're sharing. We've learned something else about Bryan Kohberger through the filings. And we know, Joe, you know this, it's been so frustrating, especially for us at Court TV, trying to pull the filings and share the content when so much of this is under seal. And when we saw just the docket headline a few weeks ago about the defense team wanting to incorporate autism in some way in their defense, of course, our minds started racing. We're thinking, could this go to an intent issue? Turns out, no. Turns out the defense wants to have an expert come in and explain that Bryan Kohberger does live with autism. He's on the spectrum, and they don't want to show it to show that he didn't know right from wrong or anything at the time. They're saying he's innocent. They're going with an innocence defense. But they don't want the jury to have an unfair bias against him because of his expressions. And so we pulled out a couple pieces from the filing saying, for instance, he does not show emotion on his face. He has a flat affect. He sits very still, holds his hands in the same position, has a piercing stare. He does not show expected reactions. Facial expressions don't reflect what he's feeling. He's stiff in his posture. So much going on. They talk a little bit about his OCD, apparently he has. All of these things, Joe, they want the jury to know about, to maybe explain some of Kohberger's perceived unemotional or inappropriate, maybe body language in the courtroom. What do you think about that? Do you think they're going to be successful explaining his gestures, expressions, posture, all of it?
Partly they will, and here's why. Well, let's break it down. First of all, in Idaho, there's no insanity defense. So we have to put that to rest. It's not about he's going to be insane or something. Second, his defense is not a state of mind type of defense anyway. He's saying he simply didn't do it. He's not saying I did it because I have autism or Asperger's or whatever it is. So it's not even relevant to that part of the case because he's saying he didn't do it. But lastly, a defendant can bring up, raise to in front of the jury, things about him to explain his behavior in the courtroom, how he looks. For example, I have experienced trials where witnesses and defendants have raised that they're on certain medications that make them sweat, certain medications that make them a little nervous or jumpy for whatever type of ailments they had. And that has been admitted. Why? Because you're trying to explain to the jury, hey, this guy is sweating a lot on the stand, not because he's nervous, because he's under certain types of medication. Well, the same thing here. Mr. Kohberger, I think, will be allowed to raise to some degree that he has autism, and that could be a contributing factor as to why he has this 100-yard stare, why he's unemotional, why he's very rigid, something like that. Now, they're going to have to lay foundation for that. They're going to have to get an expert, somebody who's examined Mr. Kohberger, somebody who knows his medical history. So if they can lay the proper foundation, I think the judge will let that in to the degree to describe his mannerisms in court or lack thereof.
Really helpful insight. Joe, thank you for all of that. We'll leave it here for now. We're going to be talking much more about Bryan Kohberger in our next segment. Dr. Debbie Goodman, thank you for your time and expertise. We have to say goodbye for now. We'll see you back soon. And we've got Joe Tamburino all morning. We're looking forward to that. Coming up next year on Opening Statements, we're going to continue our coverage on these new developments in Bryan Kohberger's case. We're looking at the text messages revealing what those surviving roommates were up to before and after the murders occurred. And sparks fly in a Massachusetts courtroom when defendant Karen Reed and her team decide to ambush Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan and interrupt a hearing. And look at that stare down. Well, one person was staring. I don't know if Hank Brennan was looking back at her. We'll talk about it coming up.
Mr. Kearney, the defendant. So how can the Commonwealth make the threshold show for those who know?
First, this is a ruling with Mr. Kearney, so I'm asking that Mr. Kearney and his attorney be at the table. I'm not sure why we're being joined by Ms. Reed's team.
Lori Daybell,
Already convicted for the murders of her children.
Doomsday Cult mom is now lawyer Lori.
she's representing herself.
On charges of conspiring to murder her fourth husband.
She said, I can murder you now.
She really thinks she's equipped to try this case.
She appears very sure of herself.
I have real trial experience.
It's going to be a strange trial. We'll see how it plays out.
The Cult Mom Conspiracy Trial. Live coverage coming soon. Only on Court TV.
It impacted like a lot of people on campus.
Yeah, most people try to like not bring it up because it's a sad subject to bring up upon, but everybody knows what happened and everybody mourns and everybody's upset about what happened.
We never go to the bathroom alone, never like leave anywhere alone.
No, I hope he gets put in jail or like prison for a while, yeah. And most people here do, like nobody likes him.
Newly revealed information in the Idaho student murders case is what's trending in true crime this morning. Court documents are revealing more details of the communications done between surviving roommates of these four beautiful students who were murdered. The victims, Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Gonsalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. Now, on the morning they were stabbed to death in their Moscow, Idaho home, there was texting going on, and we previously reported about a little bit of it between Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen. They are their surviving roommates. And we shared with you some of the terrified text messages moments right after the murders took place. But now the defense team wants to bring in more messaging apps to show that these two surviving roommates were awake for much of the morning, awake in the house after the murders. They didn't go back to sleep, as many people interested in this case assumed. Investigators believe those homicides took place between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. So there's now more information on both Mortensen's and Funk's social media accounts and their movements showing what happened later that morning. The defense points to wanting Mortensen and Funk and what they were doing with their phones to come in. And they say that it really points to the time frame. So let's give you a little bit of a look at the interactions. 7:30 a.m., Funk calls her dad. Around 8:05 till all the way to 10 a.m. roughly, Dylan Mortensen's on Instagram. 8:42 to 8:44, Bethany Funk is taking pictures. 10 a.m. to 10:01, Dylan Mortensen is messaging. We've got incoming and outgoing Snapchats happening. 10:03, 10:04, Mortensen is on Indeed. So here's what we're asking this morning. What these messages and what the phone records might reveal about the homicide timeline. Who do they help in this case? Let's bring in the chief of police at Talladega College, retired homicide detective Chris Anderson is with us. And want to welcome in criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor David Bruno. Great to see you both. Chief, let me begin with you, please. These messages after the window, detectives believe the homicides occurred. What, if anything, do they help establish for the state's case against defendant Bryan Kohberger?
Oh, they help the state's case a lot because they established that timeline of when the murder could have occurred. There's a lot that goes into a homicide case like this when you just have pretty much circumstantial evidence. But these text messages will be key in layering on that evidence that may help convict Kohberger, but they go to help both sides, I think.
Right, right, Chief. You know, and looking at it from the defense side, David Bruno, I hope you don't mind, I'd like to ask you about that. His defense team wants these in to show that these housemates were going about their business, snapping, taking pictures, Instagramming, what have you, while these other roommates who were slaughtered were in the horrific state that they were in. How does it help the defense, David?
Well, initially when I saw it, it really goes to cut against the excited utterance exception to the hearsay rule that the prosecutors filed a motion to try to get 911 and other statements. But that's really not that important if they're going to call these witnesses, right? So for the defense, I think what they're going to try to say is that, look, when the one roommate allegedly saw the perpetrator, it couldn't have been as she says. Because why would she not act and then wait? Because at 4 a.m., she allegedly sees the tall man with bushy eyebrows in a mask. And then it is shortly before noon that the 911 call is called in. So there's that gap. And what we've learned from the filing now is they were just really going about their business. It wasn't that crazy or that dangerous that they initially led them to believe. So it's going to be important now. They also have fodder for cross-examination for the dad, for the mom, all these people that were DMing and snapping and all these things. So I guess it's where they're going, but really all for naught on your first story. If they have Kohberger buying the knife and the knife sheath and have his DNA on the buckle like you showed, I don't know where they're going.
Right. Great points, David. Yeah, I still have it here. I still have the sheath with the snap where we know the touch DNA was and the knife. This thing, I hate even holding it. This is so huge and so heavy and scary. And to think about if Kohberger did these homicides, if he was the man with the bushy eyebrows that walked out of the house that Dylan Mortensen may or may not have seen, he would have had to have been carrying this on his person because this was never recovered anywhere, ever. Concealing this. Chief Anderson, your thoughts on how one conceals this to walk out of a home cool as a cucumber if he did the murders, and then also the choosing this weapon to use to kill 4 people?
You know, obviously, if you choose a weapon that size and of that nature, you're looking to do as much destruction as you can to whatever you inflict the terror, unleash the terror of utilizing a weapon like that on. But concealing that weapon is not very hard if you're in a position. I've seen men and women that have concealed AR-15s in a simple, long coat. So it's not that hard to conceal that weapon. But when you utilize something like that in order to commit a murder, you're looking to inflict as much damage as possible.
May I ask you, please, Chief, would someone tuck it in their waistband? Or my understanding, if it was Kohberger, whoever the man was, he just had on some dark clothing, but I don't believe a coat or anything that would have had, pockets or something to contain it in. Would you think waistband?
Right. You could put it in your waistband. You can wrap it up in a towel. You maybe have on a jacket or something of that nature that you can wrap around it. I mean, if obviously the person that committed these murders had a plan, and within that plan had to have some sort of means of taking the weapon. And I'm pretty sure the person that committed this murder meant to take that sheath also. But you know, there are a multitude of ways that you could hide. You could take something from the victim's homes and hide the weapon, because ultimately, if you plan to commit these murders, there should have been a plan in order, and I hate to say this, but there should have been a plan in order to destroy that evidence also. So, yeah, there are plenty of ways that you could take a weapon of that size out without it really being noticed.
Chief, thank you for that. You know, and I believe that investigators do think that Bryan Kohberger had a plan to destroy things. You know, he took a nice drive, as we know, went near a body of water. We know, who knows if he was the one who did these murders, if he would have deposited that knife in a body of water to never be found again. But what was found, like you said, Chief, that knife sheath. David Bruno, if you're on the defense side of this and you know that investigators have the touch DNA of Bryan Kohberger, what route do you go with this? Do you go with a theory of someone else stole your knife, someone else left it behind, or somebody else planted this to frame you?
Yeah, I mean, we've heard all of that so far. We've heard that it's planted. We've heard that that search history is really another family member, ironically, right? I mean, at a certain point, these pieces of circumstantial evidence start beginning to create a mountain of evidence. And when the judge gives the instruction to the jury at the time of the deliberation, they will be instructed that evidence could be direct evidence, or it could be circumstantial evidence, inferences that you glean from the evidence that you've heard in the courtroom. And as they continue to just stack the circumstantial evidence, it's going to be very, very difficult for Kohberger and his team.